Hi everyone, welcome to IDSKETCHING.com. My name is Spencer Nugent, and today I'll be doing a demonstration on how to do a cutaway view. If you've been following the website, you'll see we've provided some new articles, specifically on communication and why we sketch. In this particular video, a cutaway view is a way for a designer to show more about a design than you would normally be able to with a regular old sketch. So I've prepared a rough sketch here of a thermos to start with, and we'll be using this as our underlay for the demo. With me I have a Sharpie ultrafine point, fairly simple implement, but still effective in communicating or design here. So I'm going to use my undersketch to create a cleaner version of this rougher design that I have, and as I go along I'm going to be cutting away a part of the object. So if you can imagine, the inner structure of the thermos may be a little bit more complicated, or you may want to show materials or the actual makeup, whether it's the number of parts or something interesting on the inside. Now this is a fairly simple design. We won't get into too many complications as we sketch this out. Now as always, I'm drawing with my shoulder, rotating the paper to the desired angle, and being quick and effective in laying down my strokes. Or quick and expressive, sorry. Now since this is a cutaway view, you'll want to have in mind some idea of what it is you're trying to show on the inside. By using my undersketch as a guide, I can add in details that I wanted to initially but hadn't had the chance to as I'm sketching here. So you can think of the undersketch as either a thumbnail that you've done or a larger version or a larger sketch that you've done fairly roughly, and we're doing a tighter version of that to help us in doing our final cutaway view. And we'll be able to hold these up in the end side by side to show the comparison of completed sketch to the actual cutaway view. And once we get to a good point where we can finish this up, we will overlay it, and in doing so I'll show you how I do my cutaway view with this particular design. So I've skipped forward just a little bit here, and as you can see I have sketched it a little tighter, the overall design, so I've clarified and defined a couple more things. The shape of the handle, maybe a little bit of a spout on the top, the overall cross section of the thermos being somewhat of a cylinder plus a rectilinear form or cuboid, as well as adding in a little bit of shadow core on the right side with some pencil. Fairly simple application of pencil, but effectively communicates the overall form. Now since we're in a fairly good spot and I'm using tracing paper, I'm just creasing this in the middle and folding it over, and this will allow me to just overlay my sketch. And since this is a thinking sketch rather than a presentation sketch, I can use this tracing paper as a means to overlay and not feel like I'm wasting an expensive piece of marker paper or vellum as I'm doing this. I tend to like to brush and flatten out my tracing paper, as you can see. And we're starting a cutaway view here. And once again, as you're doing this, you'll want to think about the overall makeup of the product that you are sketching. In my case, I'm starting by sketching out the actual wall thickness of this thermos. So if this were, say, an injection molded part on the top, there'd be a certain wall thickness to it, and I represented that by drawing in the center line first. And your cutaway view doesn't have to be on the center line, but I've chosen to do that for purposes of simplicity. You'll notice that by folding my tracing paper along the middle, I'm able to keep my over sketch in a fairly consistent position. even when I'm rotating the page. Sometimes if you do an overlay, you may find that your paper tends to shift, but by actually creasing the paper, it allows me to keep that in the correct place. And just continuing here with the oversketch, here's the wall thickness for the lower half of the thermos. And you'll notice I'm sketching a little bit slower, just a little bit more thought out here. Perhaps in the middle of the thermos there's some feature I want to show. And by me ghosting that in just a while ago, it's an indication of thinking about what that may be without actually laying down the pen stroke. Now if you wanted to, you could do a fairly rough cutaway view with fairly rough strokes and then come back and overlay that. However, I'm not doing that in my case, but rather thinking and ghosting things in before I actually draw them. So there we go. I'm starting to sketch in the inside of the thermos, as you can see there. I'm using that under sketch as a guide to see where those lines would potentially fall. I know that corner is rounded as well as the front here. And I know you can't see my wrist, but I am drawing with my shoulder. So once again, it's important to just lock that wrist and draw with your shoulder, even if it may seem uncomfortable. Okay, once you're in a good spot with your sketch, you'll be ready to add some extra line weight on the outside. And this is in preparation for adding marker to the oversketch here. Just defining our fillets as well as the overall outline of the form. And anywhere where light may pass an edge and create shadow, that's where I'll add some extra line weight. So on the overall outside as well as that inner edge where that cutaway is happening. And this is achieved by merely going over the line in the same place that you laid it down. So you can see here it's a little bit more progressed. I've added some line weight, a little bit of an arrow, just some fairly basic details, and a shadow to help ground this thermos on the page. Once again, draw with that shoulder to help you achieve those fairly straight and expressive lines as you're sketching. And of course, no sketch is complete without some decent notes. And this isn't particularly anything, but rather some dummy text to help illustrate how much interest adding notes adds to your sketch as you're working at it. Okay. It looks like we're in a fairly good spot, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some markers here. So I have here with me a red Prismacolor marker that I'm going to be using primarily. If you're curious as to the type, it's a scarlet red, or crimson red, pardon me. Fairly basic red that comes in the basic 12 color pack of Prismacolors. If you're using Copics or any other brand, it doesn't really matter the color per se. If you're using tracing paper and you have one marker, you can use both the front and the back side of the tracing paper. Now as I'm shading this, I've picked a light source, and though I haven't indicated on the paper, you can tell by the way that I'm shading this object. Things to the right side here are a little darker and more filled in, and things to the left side are a little lighter and less filled in. And this will help add some depth to our cutaway view here, fairly simply. A lot of people ask me how much marker to put onto a sketch, or how much is enough, or how much is too much. And the answer really is, with markers, you don't want to put too much down, because you may end up with a sketch or drawing that looks like something out of a coloring book if it's overdone. And if it's underdone, it may look a little too weak and not communicative enough. Now, as you can see, by using the front and the back of the tracing paper, I've achieved two separate values with the same marker. And I've shown you this in a few other demos as well. And once again, the reason we do cutaway views or sketches like this is to show the interior makeup or additional things you may not be able to see with your regular sketch. So as you can see here, I have a little bit of insulation on the inside or some separate material. I'm using a pencil here to shade that, to show that it's a different material based on its tone. Now this you would have not been able to see in the same sketch had you done this with the lid on and totally covering the lower half of the thermos or container. And granted, it's not perfect technically, but this is merely to show the benefits of having a cutaway view, to show the functional side of your idea and communicate effectively to whether it's your coworkers or clients what the internal makeup of your design may be. So just a few finishing touches here, a little bit of shading to add to our shadow core and communicating the shape, and we should be good to go. Well, thanks for joining us at IDSKETCHING.com. I hope this has been informative. If you have any suggestions as to what you'd like to see, email us at info@idsketching.com. That's info@idsketching.com. Also, be sure to add us on Twitter, Facebook, and sign up for our RSS feed. Subscribe for easy updates, as well as access to videos and photos and everything you would find on the site. And there's our comparison, the undersketch versus the cutaway view. You can see the extra information that it adds. And thanks, and come again.